my pleasure to welcome you all to the museum and to our Lunch and Learn series, to thank our overseer co-chairs, Mieko Kami. Mieko, stand up. And Dewey, stand up. And all of the committee members that worked so hard to organize this whole series. If the committee members would stand up and take a bow for a little applause. Thank you, Lisa, Sonia, everyone. So this has been a wonderful opportunity for our overseers to work together and really take charge of this whole event, and to highlight the museum's investment in the kind of deep learning that we think is an opportunity for both children and adults in this museum. And so it's really a great pleasure, both personally and professionally, to introduce our speaker today. Dr. Michael Thompson and I know each other for many years, but actually our paths hadn't crossed for a number of years. So it was really great to meet each other as we both walked in from the parking lot this morning. I think the last time we were together was at a State House panel at which we both were presenting to then Governor Paul Cellucci, who tragically is no longer with us. But Michael has worked for nearly 35 years as a clinical psychologist. I won't go through his very elaborate resume. He's the author of multiple books, did his graduate work at the University of Chicago, speaking widely around the country and around the world, both media things as well, and wrote his, I think, one of the early books, Raising Cain, with one of my dear colleagues from many years ago, Dan Kinlan. What I want to, and what I think is really important is that Michael is going to talk about something that is really at the core, I think, of what the museum is a leader in, and that is the social and emotional experience of children growing up. All too much is emphasized on teaching to the test, on drill to kill, on MCAS scores and cognition, and less attention to the social and emotional life of children. And so it's with great pleasure that Michael will talk about that aspect of childhood that we think is very important. And I hope many of you knew about our work this weekend when Anna Housley-Juster hosted the Power of Play work at the museum for children all day Friday and Saturday, and for adults Saturday evening, which I think is another way we're getting at the joy of discovery and the power of play for young children. So the other point I wanted to emphasize about my reacquaintance with Michael is that he is now a grandfather, and will become much more reacquainted with the museum as he visits early and often with his grandchildren. So without further ado, Michael Thompson.
Thank you very much. Let me see that I turned this off. Having my phone go off, giving a presentation is embarrassing. And it's happened before. I am delighted to be back at the Children's Museum. I am delighted to see Michael again. It had been too many years. And I immediately told him that I have, my children are 29 and 24, and so I haven't been here in a number of years, but I have two granddaughters who live in New Hampshire, and they just turned 3 and 1. So we're about to enter the years where we'll be making very frequent trips. And I have only the warmest memories of bringing both my children, Joanna and Will, to this museum many, many, many times, because what an extraordinary experience it was. But I want to tell you one story from March, because I had a man who was intensely interviewing me about the Boston Children's Museum. I happened to be speaking in Cluj-Napoca, Romania. For those of you who haven't been to Cluj-Napoca, there's an international school there with the wonderful name Transylvania College. And they're very aware of what a great brand they have. And a man grabbed me because he had lived for a few years in Chicago, a Romanian man, and moved back to Cluj, which was his hometown. And he was beginning to try and raise funds to start a children's museum in Cluj. And for him, at this great distance, well, there are children's museums in Chicago and fine museums in Chicago that had been an inspiration for him. But he was going back and he was trying to introduce a children's museum into a city that had never seen anything like it. And he was asking me as a parent, did you take your children to a children's museum? Why do Americans love it? I mean, what do they see in it? What can I use to persuade Romanian parents that this is something worth supporting? So it was fun to have these conversations, knowing that I was going to be here. I'm honored to be invited. I'm going to answer questions, but I am obliged to give you a talk, right? I wrote a book called Best Friends, Worst Enemies, Understanding the Social Lives of Children. I wrote it with Catherine O'Neill Grace, a classroom teacher for 20 years who had then become the editor of Independent School magazine. And I wrote an article about children's social lives, and she said, you should turn this into a book. And I dallied for years and didn't do it. And then I ended up writing Raising Cain with Dan Kinlan. And it was a success, and publisher said, well, what's the book you next want to write? And of course it was Best Friends, Worst Enemies, because I had been a middle school teacher, middle school social studies teacher before I became a psychologist. I had watched 6th, 7th, and 8th graders for a number of years as a teacher and watched the intense social interaction in middle school. And then as a school consultant, as a psychologist, I dealt with the questions of veteran teachers who still had questions about what do we do about this 5th grade boy who sits alone at lunch and is unable to make friends. How do we help him? What do we do with these 3 7th grade girls who are so powerful that other girls call them the night before to find out what they can wear so they won't get teased? What do we do about that, Dr. Thompson? And as a young psychologist in schools, I was close to clueless. I was close to clueless about these questions, and I was amazed that veteran teachers didn't have the answers to them. And then as I began to do more and more parent education, I saw that this was an area, particularly for American parents. It's not. I go to other countries where parents do not monitor their children's friendships or see a school as a place of friendship making and social networking in the way American parents do. American parents, we are maybe not as stressful as Chinese and Japanese parents about academics. We're not. But we want our children to be an academic success, an athletic success, and a social success. We turn out to be pretty stressful. And there are a lot of parents who think that if they monitor and supervise their children's social lives, they can improve on it. And it was watching parents operate in that way that made me want to write a book explaining what's happening for children with their social lives, particularly in school. And that's Best Friends, Worst Enemies. I interrupted myself and didn't cite the third co-author on the book, Larry Cohen, in Brookline, Massachusetts, a wonderful psychologist who has his own terrific books, one called Playful Parenting and another, The Opposite of Worry, which I think is the best book on childhood anxiety for parents, The Opposite of Worry by Larry Cohen. But Catherine and Larry and I had the most fun writing Best Friends, Worst Enemies, because every time we got together to write, we would just start relating our middle school experiences to each other. And once you really start mining your own middle school experience, it all comes back to you horribly and wonderfully. And you come to appreciate actually what you learned socially in school. what you learned by being around other children all day and working it out with them, having conflicts, loving each other, hating each other, and back and forth. And I think most of us in here did not have our parents monitoring it the way this generation of parents is monitoring it. And it's a mixed bag, frankly. It's a mixed bag to have parents following their children's social lives. I was at the Stratton School in Arlington, which is my town. I'm at the almost all Arlington table here with two moms, and I'm going to see their children at the Dallin School in Arlington. I always, almost every year, visit all of the elementary schools in Arlington. And I had a mother say to me, you know, what do I do about bullying? And I said, well, what do you mean bullying? And she said, well, my daughter's with a whole group of girls, and they're with their friends one day, and they're not friends the next day, and and they talk about each other, and it's terrible. And I said, you have a 4th grade daughter. And she said, how did you know? And I said, trust me. Trust me. And I said, I will be honest with you, I was nicer than this, but I said to her, I've never seen a group of, well, she asked me, do I contact other moms to talk about this? And I said, in my experience, I have never seen a group of mothers of 4th grade girls get together to discuss what their 4th grade girls are doing and solve the problem. Actually, I've almost never seen a group of 4th grade moms add any value whatsoever, but I have seen situations where moms amplified the problem. Yeah? So that's kind of hard news for parents. But what's the fallback? What's the fallback? The fallback is understanding how much children know about friendship, how much children work at friendship, how much they care for each other. If there are experiments going on in any school day with social cruelty and teasing, and yes, there's bullying, but if there are experiments in that, there are also thousands of experiments in tolerance, in acceptance, in generosity, and in outright love. Schools are actually quite loving places. I mean, let's be honest. If all of us were in school all day long together, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, we would get on each other's nerves, right? And soon we'd be sitting at different tables with our people. And we might in fact we'd start talking about the people at the other table who are not quite like us. Yes? Is this human behavior? So what I see, and I go to 50 schools a year. I go to about 20 independent schools in the United States because that's where I started. I usually go to about 12 public schools, not counting Arlington, public schools around the country, and I go to 18 international schools. And if I were to stand out in front of any school in the morning, I would see the same drama in every school around the world, which is children get off the bus, they get out of a car, they come out of a subway, they come around the corner, and they look for the eyes of another child. They look for their friends. That's what children do. They look for their friends. And 2 4th grade girls, their eyes meet and they go over and they get close and they touch and they start to talk, and they are so glad to see each other. And their moms might think, really, what do they have to talk about? They were online with each other. They were together all weekend. There's nothing new to discuss, right? But it's a long anticipated reunion after 12 hours of being out of touch. Let's again make the analogy to adults. Adults greet each other in the morning, and we don't have absolutely riveting conversations. It's a nice weather, it's sunny, it's rainy, it's snowing, it's cold, right? These are not spellbinding conversations. What they are is a an assertion of our common humanity. It's cold for both of us. It's been a snowy winter for all of us, right? The sun is now shining at last, and it's shining on both of us. That's what adults do for each other. It's exactly what children do. And what friends say to each other at the beginning of the school day is, I'm with you, you're with me, we're going to go through the day together. I've got somebody to laugh at my jokes, right? I've got somebody to hang out with, and oh my God, I've got someone to eat lunch with. Right? That most terrible time in the school day. And the vast majority of children who come into school have exactly that. I break it down for you, but I think about 85% of children who walk into a school can look forward to the companionship of a friend, and they know they're going to be okay that day. They'll be able to communicate their fears about the work. They'll be able to whisper to somebody. They'll be able to gossip. It's going to be good. There's a small minority of kids who walk into school and they don't look up. They don't look up because they know very well there's no other child waiting to greet them. There's no point. And they go head down into the school and they go to their locker, they go to their classroom, and the first person in the day that child talks to is a teacher. And the teacher's happy to talk to the child. And she doesn't act teacherly. She doesn't start talking about homework. She asks about a TV show or a hobby or a video game or something. Because in that moment, she's trying to extend her friendship, but she has a pang in her heart. Because she knows that she can't be this child's friend. And what she's hoping is, in a few months, another child will open up and make this child his or her friend, that next year there'll be new children, that the class will reorganize, that there'll be some social possibility for this child. Till then, she's trying to bridge this kid, get him there, and happy to do the work. When I ask teachers how many have done that this week for a child, for whom you've done it many times, about a quarter of, in an elementary school, about a quarter of the hands go up. So they are looking after these kids. But no adult who knows child development fools themselves thinking, oh, I can be a friend to the child, right? One of my favorite definitions of friendship came from a 6th grade girl. I interview kids in assemblies, I'll tell you about that. But this 6th grade girl got up and I shoved a microphone. I make them, all kids stand up, say their name, and I put a microphone in front of their face. There were 300 middle schoolers there, and she got up and she froze. I said, what's friendship? She was going to define friendship for me. She said, she said, it has to be like this, can't be like that. It has to be like this, can't be like that. One of the most elegant definitions of friendship. Has to be like this, can't be like that, right? And I so believe that when moms come up to me and say, oh, my daughter and I are best friends, I always think, Gotta be like this, can't be like that. You can have a great mother-daughter relationship. You can be very close and friendly, but this is friendship, as that 6th grade girl said. And what I try and do for people in Best Friends, Worst Enemies is to allow adults to remember to see childhood through the lens of friendship and the pursuit of friendship and the yearning for friendship and the practicing of friendship. What I have found in recent years is that too many people are seeing childhood through the lens of bullying and vigilance about bullying. If I asked you, how many of you in here think that bullying is on the rise in the United States? If you read the media, that's a completely reasonable conclusion. What's on the rise is media interest in bullying and a greater public awareness of the traumatic effects of bullying. So I used to give this talk without using the word bullying at all. And I did it as an exercise and to make a point. But it became impossible when Massachusetts passed the most stringent anti-bullying law in the United States after the death of Phoebe Prince in South Hadley, Massachusetts, which was covered by the Boston Globe day after day after day about the mean girls driving her to her death with cyberbullying and saying, you should kill yourself. And Phoebe Prince did, in fact, commit suicide. Terrible and tragic. I have some reservations about this law. The idea that elementary school principals have to decide what bullying is serious enough and they're required mandated to report that to the local police, which for me has always raised the image of two sixth grade girls sitting with an officer in a blue uniform, whom I think is completely overmatched, but totally. But it's, I have some worries about it. It's a very well-intended law, there's no doubt about that. And I don't doubt that it has made some positive difference. But when politicians enter an arena as subtle as social conflict and bullying and saying what that is and how it should be worked out. So I commend you if you want. There finally somebody wrote a book that expressed my doubts. It's called Bully Nation by Susan Eva Porter, about the way in which the widespread use of bullying as a term now fits, it's just thrown around constantly. And I know it because I'm the supervising psychologist at Belmont Hill. So I've got 440 boys. And if they so much as bump each other coming into assembly, one turns to the other and says, "Don't bully me." When boys are ironic, you know that when teenage boys are very ironic, you know that they're on to something about the way the word has become overused and inflated. I have to tell you, I've benefited from this law by quite a bit because it mandated education. So towns would call me and say, "Dr. Thompson, would you come give your anti-bullying talk?" And I'd say, "Well, I don't have an anti-bullying talk." And they said, "Yes, but you wrote that anti-bullying book." And I said, "Actually, I wrote a book about children's friendships. It's not an anti-bullying book." And so the person would be calling me from the PTO or from the administration of the school would say, "Well, do you have bullying in your outline?" And I'd say, "Yes." "Good, we can fund it." And I said, "But I will warn you, in my outline, the sentence reads, 'Bullying is a bad lens through which to view the social lives of children.'" Okay? And I'm trying to get people to think about it differently. So I talk to about 10,000 middle schoolers a year. I spoke with a couple of hundred at the Stratton School in Arlington yesterday. I'll be at the Dallin School talking to their 4th and 5th grade tomorrow. For me, middle school, psychological middle school, is grades 4 through 9. So whenever I say middle school, don't think 6, 7, 8. For me, it is grades 4 through 9, particularly for this topic. So when I get a group of 4th and 5th graders together and explain I'm a psychologist, sometimes kids say, "You're going to talk to us about bullying?" And they look demoralized because we're doing a good job of preaching anti-bullying in schools, but we're not necessarily doing a good job of communicating to kids that we understand what their social lives actually are about. So I asked the 4th and 5th graders yesterday at the Stratton School to define friendship for me. I said, "I want 10 definitions of friendship, and I want you to stand up and say your name and define friendship, and listen to each other so that every definition is different." It's a challenge. And kids can always get up. And it's typically a 5th grade girl who always starts out, "What's friendship?" "That's someone you can trust." "Trust to do what?" "Keep a secret." Okay? When I was at the Bishop School last year in Arlington, I said, do your friends keep all your secrets?" She said, "Mostly." I said, "Do you keep all of your friends' secrets?" She said, "Mostly." I was at Sonoma Country School in California, and an 8th grade boy said, I said, "What's friendship?" And he said, "Confidentiality." I said, "Do your friends all keep your confidences?" He said, "About 80% of the time." This is sort of a numbers guy. So I said to him, and the rest of the other 20%, what do you do? He said, hey, they're your friends. He didn't use the word forgiveness or acceptance, but the concept was clearly there. They're still your friends, right? And then as a child said yesterday, I can't remember whether it was a fourth or fifth grader, I said, loyalty. What do you mean by loyalty? Well, they're always there for you. Always there for you when? If you're sad, you're discouraged, you need help, right? Somebody else said they help you with your homework. I said, yes. It's a good, practical definition of friendship, right? Kids never use the word empathy, but I get so many definitions of it. A friend can tell what you're feeling before you say anything. A friend knows when you're sad. A friend tries to cheer you up. A friend looks after you and tries to gives you a lift. A boy said yesterday, I said, what's friendship? And he said, you're nice to your friends. I said, are you not nice to other people? He said, no, you're nicer to your friends than you are to just anybody, of course. Of course. And I said, but why are you nice to them? And he said, well, you hang out together a lot. And, you know, I had the principal at Michael Hanna at Stratton writing down the list for me. And he told me at the end he was going to publish it and put it up around the school, and he should have, because by the time fourth and fifth graders are finished, they have defined friendship as a bond, very strong liking, shared interests. A boy yesterday gave me shared interest in just those words. You know, sometimes they say you like to play the same games. But loyalty, understanding, acceptance. Seventh grade girls all say, your friends don't care if you're weird sometimes. Right? That's very important, that they see you at your weirdness and they still remain your friends. I've had sixth grade girls say, well, with a friend you can fight and get over it. Conflict resolution. Obviously, if you can't get over it, you won't be friends. But I've had a lot of testimony that you fight with your friends. You do fight with your friends. And kids understand that that's part of the package, and they have to develop skills to handle it. When parents don't understand that kids have skills, and when parents immediately wade in to try and sort out the conflict, well, a fifth grade girl at Stratton yesterday, see, I only have to refer to yesterday. I've actually talked to 10,000 middle school kids in the last 12 months. But I never tire of doing this assembly. It always has a freshness for me. Because there's always that sense in which kids have discovered friendship on their own. It is their discovery, and they see the value of it. They don't say, oh, my mom taught me about friendship, right? It's the discovery of how strongly you feel about somebody else. I occasionally, kids, when say, it's a really special bond. I say, is it love? Oh, the fourth and fifth grade, Stratton yesterday, that was, I almost lost my crowd there. But I was at Hong Kong International School, and a very brave fifth grade boy, I said, what's friendship? And he said, it's love. This fatalistic, somewhat funny way. What can you do? People really like each other. But all you have to do is see the excitement of children who just want to be with each other all the time. They're totally in love, sometimes madly in love. And then teachers saying, what do I do about this? They don't want to work in a group with anybody else. They only want to work together. And that becomes problematic. But of course, they're falling in love. You know, when you're a little baby, you're kind of stuck on your mom's lap. And you may see an absolutely enchanting looking baby sitting on another mother's lap, but there's nothing you can do about it. But the second you're ambulatory, you start making friendship choices. Before you can talk, before you can play, before you can achieve this nice this nice play plateau. You do parallel play, and kids are working with each other through this. I'm always saying to parents, when children are together, let them play. Do not play with them always, right? I don't actually think that parents add that much value to child play. I'm going to be very tough on you today. Because I know you're very interested and the Children's Museum just had this thing over the weekend with parents, right? The power of play.
Self-directed.
Self-directed play. Excellent. Self-directed play. Excellent. Excellent. And that's the essence of it. If you're willing to watch children develop their own ability to play,